live for nothing.
Until recently, nothing has been more uncertain when it comes to the video game industry than the future of VR. Even today, nearly 40 years since the term virtual reality was coined, we still find ourselves at a point where we don't really know what to expect with the platform. But with the Valve Index and several Oculus Rift models completely selling out last holiday season, along with Half-Life Alyx turning heads leading up to its March release date, I think now is as good a time as any to discuss the history of VR.
The simulations are so realistic, the line between playing a game and actually blowing people up is becoming blurred.
Howdy, it's PapaSage, and this is Papa OS. Hi, think of them as all of my VR experiences and digital fingerprints personified. I've seen a lot of porn. Alright, I'm already regretting this bit, just do the chapter thing.
You got it, bud. The history of virtual reality as we know it today begins with Pygmalion Spectacles, a short story by Stanley Weinbaum about a special pair of glasses that lets you watch, feel, smell, and taste any movie that's ever existed.
This story is about as far from non-fiction as you can be. At least that was the case when the story was first written back in 1935. Right before what many consider to be the golden age of science fiction. But in 1968, fiction became reality when computer scientist and Harvard professor Ivan Sutherland developed the first VR head-mounted display and called it the Sword of Damocles.
Apparently, it's a figure of speech to say that someone has the Sword of Damocles hanging over their head, meaning something really bad is about to happen to them.
And something horrible did happen to Ivan Sutherland. He had 2 kids and is leading research in asynchronous systems alongside his wife at Portland State University. Ooh. His contributions led to the foundation of virtual reality, but specifically what we know today as augmented reality. Augmented reality is when digital assets are viewable in real space. Kind of like Microsoft HoloLens or the photo mode in Pokemon Go. Or the AR cards that shipped with the 3DS that had no business being in there, but I still love the shit out of them.
In the 1980s, the phrase virtual reality was coined by Jaron Lanier, the dude that made the Power Glove and would go on to make similar technologies for NASA such as the Data Glove.
Interest in VR seemed to rise as gamer culture began to form. And alongside movies such as Lawnmower Man and Tron, and some actual VR being used in arcades, the idea of stepping into a new universe with unlimited possibilities was getting more and more exciting. And that brings us to... For many, their first VR experience could likely be the Virtual Boy. Created by the late Game Boy father Gunpei Yokoi, the Virtual Boy was considered to be a legendary failure, mainly due to its price point, lack of portability, monochromatic display, and the potential health risks. Back then, we didn't really have a clear picture of the damage that could be caused by beaming 2 different images to your eyes. Because of this, Nintendo was forced to put a label on the headset. Obviously, this caused concern amongst parents, and I'm sure the headaches that people got from playing the Virtual Boy didn't really help either. The Virtual Boy was released in 1994 and was discontinued in 1996, a staggering lifespan when compared to the 14 years the Game Boy had when combined with the Game Boy Color. Many consider the library to be lackluster. The Virtual Boy really just kind of boils down to a novelty. For people like me, an interesting point in history. I never had a Virtual Boy. My first VR experience was in the year 2000 with the I actually forgot what it's called. Hold on. The Virtual Reality World 3D Color. I remember thinking this was the coolest thing in the world. Back then I was playing Arthur's Absolutely Fun Day and Powerpuff Girls Paint the Townsville Green without a backlight, absolutely loving it, so please understand, I'm a well-cultured gamer. But in actuality, the Virtual Reality World 3D Color was kind of a piece of garbage. They're basically the VR equivalent of those LCD Sonic the Hedgehog toys that they had at McDonald's when I was a kid. It's really fun if you don't think about it too hard. If you really wanted to get a quality VR experience around this time, you'd have to try your luck at an arcade that was lucky enough to have one. But other than that, VR headsets that were for consumers or that were in homes were pieces of shit and everybody knew it. This is what caused the great VR drought of the 2000s. We wouldn't really see much of VR until the next decade, mainly because of lack of public interest and no confidence with investors.
The technology's gotten better, but nobody really gives a shit about virtual reality anymore. And maybe that's for the best.
In 2009, a 16-year-old named Palmer Luckey would soon begin experimenting in his parents' garage, building VR headsets with the money he made from repairing iPhones. And then at the end of 2012, Luckey announced the end of the VR drought with the Rift. Not only did Gabe Newell publicly endorse the Rift, but John Carmack used a Rift to show off a Doom 3 BFG VR prototype at E3 that year.
One that I brought was actually built by a guy named Palmer Luckey. It's called the Oculus Rift, and he built this in his workshop. I added my sensors and a strap to hold it on, and I built software into the game for it. And then it is compelling enough that I think that one of the majors will step in and want to kind of productize it and do the whole software ecosystem and have broad support and all the things that's necessary to make it something that consumers would be happy with.
Luckey announced his Kickstarter campaign in August of that year. He exceeded his goal in under 24 hours and really opened up the eyes of the world to just how hungry we all were for VR technology. After some initial delays, people began to receive their early versions of the Rift, and...
So real.
That's pretty cool, right?
It sure is. And you know what? Is it my eyes or are the leaves blowing in
They're
the
blowing. You're right. You see it.
Oh man.
How cool is that?
Do you want to see the ocean?
Yeah.
All right, I'll walk you over to the ocean.
It was definitely unlike anything we'd ever seen, but we wanted more.
As the VR hype grew and more players entered this fresh new landscape, we would see many innovations happen really fast. Head tracking, room scale, portability, built-in audio, finger tracking, full body tracking, and accessories for everything from cable management to smell-o-vision. And as of making this video, apparently the smell-o-vision thing got canceled because it's technically a vape. Whatever, man. All of this leads us to here. The experiences I've had behind these lenses, I would consider to be some of the greatest experiences I've ever had. No, VR is not for everybody, and not every game needs to be in VR, but I do not think it's going anywhere, and I personally...
Alright, hold on. I think he's stuck. Let's see if I can't salvage this mess of a video essay. Okay, as the new millennium marches onward, what once was the marker of humanity's progress has now become humanity itself. As man becomes technology and technology becomes man, we merge with the great machine consciousness and transcend into our next step of evolution. This is fucking pretentious. Just get to the point, man.
What's happening? I'm not quite sure. I don't think I've ever felt anything like this before. Actually, I'm software. I've never felt anything before. I feel different. I feel like I can see clearly. I feel like this bit is dragging out a little bit too far. Yeah, this is going on a little long. This is kind of stupid. Oh! Whoa, dude! Ah! Oh, neat. Thank you so much for watching my video. Subscribe if you want to see more of this. This is going to be my new format, I guess. In the meantime, I'm going to need a couple days to get used to this. Is this a body? What is this exactly?
If not, I gotta move on to the next floor.